And welcome to another edition of Equity Guru's Investor Roundtable, where we sit around a square table, not round, and we discuss the pros and cons of particular companies and let you know what we think in terms of why we would or would not invest and how much money we'd be willing to put behind that statement. Today we're going to be focusing on Standard Uranium, it's a Canadian uranium explorer, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol STND. CEO is John Ivey. They are a company that's operating just outside of the Athabasca Basin. So we decided to bring on our uranium expert, Fabi Laura. Fabi, can you tell us what you think about Standard?
Yes, as soon as I unmute my microphone, I can tell you all I know about Standard Uranium.
Awesome.
By the way, his CEO is John Bay. John Ivey is the guy who worked for Apple, which
Jesus.
can be easily mixed up with John Bay,
yeah, I know.
designer extraordinaire. But don't worry, I'm sure he'll be flattered to be compared to somebody like him.
I fucking hope. All right, go ahead.
Standard Uranium has 5 super prospective projects all around the Athabasca Basin. And this time, I promise I will not say the magic words that the Athabasca Basin is the Saudi Arabia of uranium. So let's just use a different term. There's a hell of a lot of uranium in high quantities, high concentration in the Athabasca Basin. And most of it is concentrated to either the east or the west. They have projects in both areas, and they have an interesting project up north as well. Their flagship project is Davidson River, and that is to the west of the basin, which means that they're actually really close to NextGen's Arrow deposit and also Fission's Triple R deposit. Now, not only are they close to those two, but they're close to all the discoveries that have been made, I want to say, except for base loads in the last 10 years, pretty much all the discoveries that have been made have been to the west of the basin. So it's the really hot area right now. Fission 3.0 is said to be, hitting on some really, really interesting counts per second readings there. The scintillometers are literally going, off scale. And with that, it brings the attention back to the west of the basin. So within their project, they have, I guess, 4 different areas. And 1 or 2 of them are showing really prospective clues into what they possibly hold. So when you're looking at uranium within the Athabasca Basin, you're looking for a couple of things. You want a structure that holds a lot of graphite, right? That's one of the clues that you may have a structure that's amenable to hosting uranium. They're finding that. And they've also been able to get a couple of, different radioactivity showings in some of the drills that they've had so far. But because we're talking about really, really, really high grade, we're talking about footprints that are very small in a massive area. So it means that the likelihood of hitting in your first drill campaign is almost 0. And now they're probably going on to their 4th campaign or so. And they're getting closer and closer and closer. Now, with that, some retail investors have thrown in the towel and said, you don't have enough uranium. I've lost enough money. I've lost patience. Let's move on. However, they're still able to raise money quite easily in the market. Reason being, there are people in the know, people who are professional investors in uranium and institutions that invest in uranium companies, and they're backing these guys. So that tells me that the people who actually know about the geology of the place still believe in them. So that to me is almost like a contrarian bet inside a contrarian bet. Anyway, I could talk for a long time about this. Standard Uranium, I find it really interesting because they're getting close. And if they hit, we're talking double, triple, quadruple, you name it. And this thing could really, really fly because everybody knows about it. Everybody knows about Standard Uranium. And everybody's watching them.
Awesome. I like the contrarian bet inside a contrarian bet. It's like a little babushka. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. High risk, high reward.
I love it. Chris, what are your thoughts on Standard? Oh, you got to turn your volume on. Everybody's muting their mics today.
Everyone's muting. I echo much of what Fabi just said. I've been going through some of their corporate videos, and you know, when you say that they've got off-scale findings, like literally there's video on their website of them like picking up a rock and putting it against a scintometer and it goes, "Ooh," like I wouldn't walk on that property without some hazmat suits. And it's just lying around. Now, obviously, to turn that into a industrial scale operation producing a lot of uranium requires moving things along a lot further from where they are right now. But if you look at a map, they are surrounded by big players who have done exactly that. Basically, pick a name out of Canadian uranium law, and they are at some point east, west, south, or north of where Standard Uranium is camped out. So we know they're doing the work. We can see that in the news releases. We know that they're good guys because we've actually dealt with these guys before. I can say from a purely anecdotal point of view, walking past the Pac Rim and seeing the guys from Sky Harbor having lunch with the guys from Standard, that there's a lot of talk between the junior explorers about what's going on and where. And they all have smiles on their faces, like regardless of where the uranium prices are on a given day, regardless of where the explorers' stock prices are on a given day, nobody's freaking out. Nobody's saying, oh my God, where am I going to get the next coin from? They just know it's a matter of when and not if. And they also know just from walking around the property and kicking rocks that there is a stonk load of uranium in that area, wherever you look. One of the giveaways I think actually is interesting is when you look at the landscape there, it looks like it should be a forest because there's a lake and, you know, there's sun for a lot of the year, and other places in Canada there's nice big green. There's not a lot of trees up there. And I kind of take that as a sign that there's a lot of radioactivity and trees aren't necessarily, you know, sucking that in and having a great time with it. So, you know, even if you're one of those people who's like mining is murder, you know, we can't, you know, take the earth for granted. I'm going to tell you that radioactive materials in the ground are not necessarily great. They're much better at being put to good use. And in terms of where they used to end up, like it's not all like, you know, Netflix documentaries anymore where, oh my God, there's a nuclear reactor, so everyone's dying of cancer. That isn't it. There are small nuclear reactors on the back of battleships these days. You know, there are a lot of nuclear reactors around and a lot of uses for materials after they've had their use in reactors. So you know, we're coming to a place where not only is uranium going to be essential for nuclear energy, but nuclear energy is being recognized a lot wider as being much safer than it was back in the day in the Soviet Union. You know, if you want the windmills to turn and you want the solar panels to burn, you need somewhere to take your energy from when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. And for me, it just makes sense. If I was prime minister right now, my first order of business would be to build nuclear reactors across the frozen north. Like bring jobs, bring energy, sell that energy to the US, pay next to nothing for it, like, and dig it all out of Patterson Lake. So I like where Standard Uranium is in terms of geography. I like who's running it. And, you know, you can say, well, it's early stage, so what's the point? Hey, man, when it's late stage, you ain't getting it for 6.5 cents, right? This is where the value is had. If you can hold on for a little bit and just have a nice little investment that just sits and does nothing, at some stage, all of these players, the Standards, the Azincourts, the Sky Harbors, they're all in like various stages of stage one. Yeah. Maybe Sky Harbor more stage two, but they will get dragged along as this industry really blossoms in Canada and becomes recognized as potentially a massive moneymaker for the country.
There you go. The future of uranium is bright. You got to wear shades.
Apparently, I too can talk forever about this stuff.
Oh, okay. So my quick 2 bits on Standard is I like the idea of closeology. I like the management team. They're down to earth, and there's not a bunch of BSers sitting in a hole going, look, we can make some money here. And they're not just trying to keep the lights on. They're actually trying to further their project. And again, as they further themselves along, or as uranium increases in value, it will also push these projects along in terms of value as well. I am realizing, though, yes, it's early stage, but as Chris mentioned, you know, it's the best time to get in, because if you get in later, you might make something, but you're certainly not going to be the multiple bagger that you could have been if you got in an early stage. So give me a technical look at this company, Vishal. Tell me what you think that way.
Yeah, for sure. As we mentioned earlier, there has been a bit of a sell-off on the stock. Just recently, the stock actually did make new all-time record lows, hitting 6.5 cents in mid-November. But since then, the stock is finding some bottoming pattern here, ranging, whatever you want to call it. And I think some of the bottom pickers should be paying attention to something like this. Volume is still quite good. You know, you're still seeing over 6 figures or 100,000 shares traded per day. So the volume's there. I'm just waiting for, you know, one of that major catalyst, right? We talked about it being an early stage company. Wait for some sort of catalyst, whether it's from the company or from the uranium market itself. I think that's what will trigger a breakout here above 8 cents, which is the resistance zone you're working with in order to confirm a breakout of this range. The uranium markets, we've talked about this in previous uranium investor roundtables. After this major pop in early 2022, the uranium markets have just been ranging here between, what should we call this, about 53.30 to the upside. And then I also have a bottom here at around 46.65. Currently, uranium's trading at 48.35. And I think a lot of people are sort of watching this chart here just because it is at an interim support within this range. And if we do break below that, then the uranium price will probably go back to test those lows at around 46.58, 46.60. And I think that might have some people a bit worried, and obviously that's going to affect what you're seeing on the uranium charts. A positive, you know, we've talked about the long term, about the energy uses and all that kind of stuff, clean energy, and how nuclear energy is a solution. I think we should be looking also at geopolitics with Russia. Just recently, there's been talks about a Russian ban on uranium, and just on December 5th, so just yesterday, we've just seen the implementation of a price cap on Russian oil. So perhaps uranium is going to be the next commodity on the chopping block there. So that could be a potential catalyst to look at, which could, you know, cause a nice reversal here in the spot price of uranium. And we'd also see that play out on a lot of the uranium juniors. So, and well, not just juniors, but the uranium stocks in general. So currently, right now, we are in a basing pattern. I think a lot of the bottom pickers are looking at it, but it does look, you know, quite attractive at these lows here around 7 cents.
Oh, there you go. Technical pat on the back. So, Chris, we've got some purse strings bursting open here. Every one of us has 10,000 Equity Guru bucks to spend if we so choose. For a few seconds, give me your quickie estimation on what you'd like to drop on standard.
All of it.
Wow.
I mean, you know, I might not do it in a day because, you know, I don't want to necessarily drive it to 15 cents and have whoever's selling it take advantage and drive it back down again. But look, if people want to give you good stock for cheap, my advice is that you take it. Like 6.5 cents on this. Let's put it in a perspective. In late 2021, this was a 47.5 cent stock, right? So you are looking at a drop off of about, what is it, like 80%? It's more progressed, but you get an 80% discount. Now, if IKEA was doing that, so you'd be down there with Cube Truck. And this is realistically a stupid price, considering that these guys are legitimately, look at the last private placement news release, and there was a big chunk that came in as flow-through financing, right? You don't do flow-through financing unless you're actually looking to do work, because there'd be no other reason for the money, right? It's got to be applied to the work. So they're out there with drills, and they're out there figuring out like what this property actually has potential-wise. Because I've been doing putting together a video on these guys, I've gone through hours of the video footage that they've got, and it is good stuff. Like, it's good explanatory stuff. Even if you don't understand anything about uranium, if you go to their website and you look at their videos, you'll get an education. And the fact that they're prepared to tell people put a little effort into explaining, like, what does it mean when I see these figures in the drill results. That's smart. They're doing everything they're supposed to do. They're not getting any love for it from the markets because tax loss selling time. They had a private placement that was at 15 cents. So people probably keen to get out of that, considering it's now at 6.5, 7. So all the reasons to not be stuck in this stock are there, but all the reasons to get in this stock are also there, right? This is the moment. Will it get cheaper? Maybe. Anything can happen. But should it get cheaper? By the time we're done with tax loss selling later in the month, I would see this thing as being realistically likely to go on a bit of a tear. So my 10K, I'd be probably dribbling it through as people with weak hands get out. But I definitely want all of it in.
Well, there you go. Hands in. Fabi, what do you think?
I'd put half in now, and I would do the follow, which I probably shouldn't talk about, but we're here to provide value. So let's talk about the dirty stuff. It's very difficult for a uranium discovery to be kept as a secret because you can bring your scintillometer to the core shack, as they do. And you know they try to find radiation in the core. And if you know that your holes, if you put the scintillometers in the holes and it gives a reading and this stuff is beeping, it's very difficult to go to the bar and not show with a massive smile and a big tab that you found something. So it's not that the company is a leaky boat, but it would be very obvious that you found something of value, especially in this case when the company has been at it for so long. So I think that before the news comes out, and this is nothing to do with Standard Uranium, it just has everything to do with how uranium is found, period, end of story. Before the news comes out, you see price movement, you see volume, you see something that doesn't gel with what's been happening with the stock. Yeah. And then you're like, maybe there's something to this. Yeah. And then I would deploy more of the cash. So there's a little tip on, uranium shenanigans.
There we go. Yeah.
Insider view.
Head like me puts 10K down in one hit.
Yeah.
Fabi doing the expert approach to the uranium investment. Okay, well, I'll throw my 2 cents in. I am probably along the same lines as Fabi right now. Yeah. And it's not necessarily, as she said, that it's standard themselves, but it is a process. And I would like to see something happen. Right. But you know what? At the price it's at right now, I'd like to get a little bit in, at least, so I've got a foothold if things get crazy. So, yeah, I'm a copycat. I'm going for 5,000. I'm dropping it in. How about you, Vishal? What do you think?
Yeah, after Fabi's tidbit there, I'm going to follow her advice. I'm going to be putting in 5K here as well. I do like the technical setup in terms of a bottoming pattern here, potential double bottom, as I said. And I think, I'm just bullish on uranium as a whole in terms of the whole energy and the geopolitics side of things. So I would also have a portfolio of, say, the Sprott uranium and also uranium royalties and other near-term, uranium producers. So Standard would also be included in, I guess in the junior aspect side of things. But yeah, 5K in Standard, and I would, as I said, it would be part of my uranium portfolio going forward.
There you go. So we're almost all in. We all had a pretty good feeling with these guys, but we want to see a little more progress. Well, that kind of wraps it up for today's episode on Standard Uranium. Please keep in mind that you should be doing your own due diligence, and future or past performance is no indicator of how things are going to go down the line. Nobody has a crystal ball. But there you have it. That's our opinion on it. We would love to see you again next time round. So if you like the video, please click that, say that you do, and join us for more of our stuff, like subscribe to the channel. All right, take care. See you next week, or whenever next is.